Today we're going to be talking about dealing with the pressures and stresses and emotional turmoil of getting good grades. This is something that the Asian American community, for sure, complains and talks a lot about. But it's also about empathy and understanding someone's situation because, from what you can tell versus what's behind the scenes, oftentimes an enormous amount of work and expectations are put on young kids to the point where it's unhealthy. And it affects other areas. Just because you think they're doing fine, they could be breaking down inside, or they could just be having a hard time, and sometimes getting uh, outsized reactions to things that may not make sense at first, but then when you unpack below the surface, you realize, wow, this is really bad. I actually rank for number one for the term Asian parents on Google. My blog ranks for various keywords, and it ranks for an article about the 10 things that Asian parents do wrong in their parenting style. Now, I caveat that article by saying that they do a lot of things right as well, which is why a lot of Asian students in America end up becoming very successful in certain areas of life, with career, income, and a lot of things becoming fairly established in social positions. But in other areas, they don't always do the best, or they may screw up their children to an extent. And it got a lot of comments about kids expressing their pressure and frustrations. And just from my firsthand experience for myself and others, and as well as from what I've heard, I think I wanted to do a discussion here on dealing with that, as well as dealing and having empathy for people who may be in those shoes. So I guess a story would be a good way to illustrate and really get the ball rolling here. And I would say there was definitely a few times where I was just under a lot of emotional pressure uh, as a student. Parents don't always know how hard it is because they're not in the classes. They don't know exactly what you do in class or what homework or coursework is expected of you. And so for me, I was taking some uh, gifted and talented advanced placement classes in high school, but at the same time, I was practicing a lot of piano every day to compete on the state level in classical piano, solo, duet, sometimes trio, but usually it's solo, duet, and concerto. And that was Asian people will understand, but that was almost like a side job. You had to have so much discipline, practice for 1 hour, 2 hours a day, and then work up and build this song so that in the springtime you can perform it without breaking down in front of judges. And it was very high pressure. On top of that, I had other things. I had a sport, I had a few clubs after school. So there's all this pressure to perform well. Plus, I was studying a couple hours every day for the SAT. So I was doing all this stuff and all this pressure, and despite performing above average compared to a lot of students, there's always someone better. There's always maybe even tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people better than me, just because the country is so vast. And even if you get an A, there's someone who got an A weighted, and then they have a higher standardized test score than you. And so, especially as an Asian, it was very, very competitive and high pressure because there's only so many schools available. And a lot of the Asians, although you're performing better than the general population, there's only a certain percentage of the Asian population that would be accepted into these colleges. So it was kind of not really a completely meritocracy in a way in terms of the academic acceptance thing. They had certain racial breakdowns that they had to abide to for equal opportunity, and that limited the pie even further. Even if you're scoring very well, you're competing against all these other people. So I had all this pressure, and of course, I broke down a few times. I think one time, and I was doing this biology project, and we had to drive and meet up with other classmates after school to create this project. And I just snapped at one of them when, at first it was supposedly going to be a fun project. We would form groups and turn what we've learned in biology into a pop song of some sort. We'd figure out the technology and turn it into a song that we could deliver as the final product. At first it was fun, then it started to get really grating. We were at the library and the other guy kept asking me to redo my lines because apparently I was not a good enough rapper. And at first I was like, yeah, I appreciate how much he's putting into this project and how much he cares about me being a better rapper, I guess. I like that musical side of it. But then all of a sudden it got grating because I realized, shoot, I have all these tests I have to study for. I have piano practice. I'm falling behind and I need to get ahead because I'm falling way behind in that, and then I won't have the song ready to perform in the competition. And I snapped at him. I yelled at him. I told him what was going on in my life and how much pressure it is. And he was, I think he had a more easier lifestyle, so he didn't necessarily get it, at least before I explained it. And then after I yelled at him and all that stuff, he kind of calmed down a bit, and like he gave me some leeway, so I didn't have to spend as long building the song. But I still kind of regret how I snapped at him, and I think I should have been nicer. I should have explained it in a much nicer way, but I needed to learn how to control my emotions, and that's still something I'm growing and developing now. But it's just to illustrate one of various moments where it was very tough, and sometimes you just break down. Sometimes the expectations not just your parents, but you place on yourself are too much, and it's okay to relax and let yourself go. I've seen that in many people, and there's a saying. It goes, sometimes the hardest people, the people you're hardest with, are yourself, and that's not fair. You need to have self-love. Sometimes, if someone did that to you, you would have self-love to them, or give love to them and give them more forgiveness. But I realize when I do it myself, I'm too hard on myself. And some things, yeah, you need high standards, but sometimes it can really destroy you or really affect you. And there's a lot of our stories where I was affected by other people because they were not empathetic about it, and they pushed and pushed. There are times where people, even teachers, would blow up at me. There's one time where a teacher blew up on me, and looking back, he probably had his own issues that he was going through, and that's why it happened, and he put it out on me, and he blamed me for something in class. And he just blew up on me, and I broke down. And to this day, I think he probably still thinks that, that was just confirmation that he was right, and that I was being too quiet in class, or too much of an emo or whatnot. Back then I had a lot of pressure, so I was definitely more quiet, and I wasn't even emo, but I guess I was a bit darker then, and I dressed darker. And he blew up on me, and that really sucked. But I broke down. I really broke down in that time, and it was a very tough time, and I even cried. And instead of getting comfort and love about that, he was just like, yeah, you shouldn't have done it. And all I did was, apparently to him, I was being too much of a pessimistic person just based off my demeanor. So it didn't even make sense. I think he was dealing with his own issues that he lashed out on me on. And, even like one or two of the classmates there, they did not help out at that time. They were just like, man, you cried. Wow, that's not a thing a guy should do. I would have not cried. But what they didn't know was everything behind that. They didn't understand the pressures and all that stuff. I didn't actually break down and cry because of this guy. In my head, and still to this day, I was like, it just doesn't even make sense, man. Like, That's nothing. I'm not even really emo. Um, why are you lashing out on me? I cried because I was dealing with all this other crap. Um, and now I had another thing, and it just broke me down in that moment. Because at the time, especially in that moment, my grades weren't doing so well, and I'd yet to go through the transformation and academic tips, those straight A tips that I teach in my other videos. I had yet to learn them, discover them, and adopt them into that system. And so um, it was a time of real struggle because I was working hard, wasn't getting even close to the level I wanted, going through a really tough time, had been for a while, and then had all this other expectations and stuff, and parents not happy, and it all blew up into this thing where it resulted in a pretty bad experience. And so I say all that just to illustrate like what you should start to realize when empathizing with those people. I think understanding that can help you in a lot of ways because you can form friendships, you can help these people out, and if you're more the selfish type, what you can get out of it is that you can build these friendships and stuff that can help them along, that help you along, further your career. They'll see that you looked out for them, and then later on they'll help you in life. And who knows, maybe they'll become a doctor or an engineer or entrepreneur, and they'll pull you up as well and help you up. But if you're not the selfish type, which I admire, and you just want to help other people and you want to see them for their struggle, you can help out, you can reach out, you can say, you can sense that they're really struggling and going through a lot of pressure. And just be a friendly companion in that time and support them. And they'll really appreciate that, whether they admit it or not. They'll usually let you know, but that can be something that everyone can really get behind, and we could form a supportive community behind and help each other up rather than bring each other down. And so sometimes, unfortunately, and a lot of times in life, you are born with a mixed hand, as in you don't have the best cards to play with. Not the worst cards, but not the best cards either. And some of that mixed hand may be parents or a life situation where you're expected a lot, or even you yourself have adopted these high expectations on grades, on performance, and so forth. Um, and also it doesn't help that you're young and naive, and then you want to please your parents or other people, which just furthers this cycle, which can often end in burnout or just disappointment and unhappiness from others and yourself, or just emotional breakdowns. And that sucks, and I feel for people who have had to go through that. At the same time, I think um, we can learn to get better at this by understanding others, understanding that we're not alone, understanding that we can help others through this, and also accepting and coming to a more healthy standard of what to expect for yourself and others. Um, at bare minimum, I think that's a great place to start. Any day above ground where you have food on table, water, you're happy, regardless of what your parents think, regardless of what society thinks. If you're above ground, you have food, water, clean water, you're ahead of a lot of people who don't even have that, who have to hike miles to get clean water. So by resetting those expectations and those standards, you can really get a lot out of life. I used to have flawed mindsets and belief around, oh, I have to get all this stuff or else I can't be happy. But now it's like, if I'm healthy, if I'm grateful, if I'm happy with just those things, that's good enough, and that can kind of reset your expectations. And it doesn't have to be a bare minimum like that. Maybe even a step higher than that, but not as high as it was before. I mean, it's about separating your mental health from what would be a nice to have. You can still have nice to have achievements and standards, but if you don't get those straight A's, if you don't start $1 million company, that's no reason to get depressed or let that pressure just turn you into someone who just gets angry or lashes out at other people, or even lets your own life crumble. And sometimes, especially with young people, you're in a situation where maybe there's little that you can change. I don't know if I could have withdrawn from piano if I really wanted to. I probably could have if I really asked. I know a lot of our classmates did. But part of me didn't want to at the time. And so I had that stress. And then part of me wanted to please my parents and just surprise them with those grades that went up. But all those things together um, can put you into a cage or a situation where you're just trying to do all this stuff that you can't. And you have to be okay that you can't. It's not the end of the world or anything close to that. That's really the thing that you should understand. If you fail at these high standards and stuff, it's not the end of the world by any means. In fact, you should, if you have the right mindset, the right mentally healthy winning mindset, you should smile. You should still be happy because, you know, if you tried your hardest and if you just focused on those bare minimum things, people who love me, food, water, a healthy body, then that's all you need. That's a lot of people, all they need to be happy. You know, there's people who work minimum wage jobs. Just today, there's people who I've met who are in their 60s, 70s. I saw a person at a Whole Foods today, and he must have been 60, 70, and he was working at a cashier. And if some of those people can be happy, then you don't need all these achievements to be happy. You know, a lot of people are pursuing those straight A's because they think it'll get them a great career one day, a great college, and then a great job with high income. But is that really the end goal that you need? Otherwise, you're just devastated and everything crumbles. So if I could tell my younger self something, it would just be, hey, I know you're going through some tough times, but it's all going to be okay. And heck, you could probably even bomb your grades, and you still do well in life. Because, I mean, academic performance is not really equated to anything. And heck, you know, there's plenty of people who, even if they don't achieve any professional career performance, they're still happy, sometimes happier and feel better than people who have all this money. So what are you actually really putting all this pressure for? Like, and it's not healthy for you, and it's not good, it's not pleasant. And so just let some of that go. You can still achieve and earn and aim for all that stuff. And that's good too. It helps you grow as an individual and stuff. And of course, it's good to have nice things. That's pleasant and fun too. But it's not a necessity. So just calm down and ease your tensions. If you screw up, you know, that's okay. You know, there's even a book called Why A Students Work for C Students by Robert Kiyosaki, a famous personal finance entrepreneur, that also further illustrates why grades aren't everything. So there's that. You know, I'm sure it relates to a lot of people. Some people have found their own philosophies. There's thousands of different situations out there, but I know it's a very tough situation. I know not everyone experiences something like that, but I know enough people from personal experience are in those kind of pressure cooker situations. And like it or not, I think you can do something to an extent about it, no matter how tough it is. I think sometimes you do that to yourself, and you have to just catch yourself and say, hey, it's going to be okay. You don't need all this. Sure, your parents but think so, but you know, they're not perfect people either. Have your own decisions and your own mindsets, and maybe that will get you through into a more healthy, happy, successful way. Because, you know, from looking at my past, looking at some others, I mean, some of that pressure was unnecessary. I thought it would help me. I think it was just maybe unpleasant and maybe unnecessary. So thanks for watching. Leave a like, subscribe button. I share these things to try and help others. So hopefully we can keep this positive. What other tips do you have? Leave a comment helping other people out and helping this community with your own tips and advice that you've learned from your journey in such situations to help other people out in those situations. Leave a comment. Let me know. Thanks for watching.